Alrighty. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to an anime story podcast. I'm the Big Bad Moon. Right over here on the right is Hallen 3D, and just below me is Bad Strategy. We're your hosts for the podcast today. An anime story. We're talking about an anime, oddly enough. This week we watched the second half of Samurai Champloo, which is quite a renowned, quite a well-known anime. Let's just make sure all my mic levels are okay. So Hallen, how are you doing today?
Doing good. How are you guys?
All my
Stellar.
Okay. So Hallen, how are you? Absolutely excellent. It's a little cold, actually, over here. It's a little bit chilly, but doing super well. Bad Strategy, how you doing?
I am doing very all right.
Mm-hmm. You seem to have a very efficient haircut.
Yes, I shaved off my hair so that it would not be in the way and bothering me and making me sad anymore. Because I decided, I don't think I want to be sad.
Hey, that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do, right? Yep. So, Samurai Champloo. Last week we discussed the first half of the show, the first, I think, 12 episodes. We just watched the last 12 episodes, or 12 or 13 episodes, whatever, 10 episodes. This last week, we have formulated opinions. I also just watched the ending credits finally. So we watched, I watched on Hulu. And so Hulu, when you're done with the show, it immediately before the ending credits switches over to like this little slate card for what's the next thing on the list to watch, and then the actual credits and the sound for the credits is minimized in the bottom right. So I actually hadn't seen the ending credits. I just watched them. They're actually pretty good. I was actually like, yeah, no, that's actually nice.
One of the episodes, it minimized for the credits, and then there was more stuff going on, and we had to, I guess this was the last episode, maybe there was another one, but we had to re-maximize and be like, what's going on? Don't minimize, there's still more to the show.
That's just the worst.
Can I establish for the record, so it is clear, stuff happening during the credits for ambience and atmosphere and world building is great and should happen all the time, because that is beautiful.
Absolutely.
Like, first episode of Made in Abyss, they get those good credits, or maybe it's the second. I don't remember.
But it was the first one.
Those are good. Those opening credits, solid.
Yes. I wish this is the thing. Actually, I think we had a discussion about it. The first episode of Made in Abyss. Not now that we're talking about Samurai Champloo. So the first episode of Made in Abyss, the credits, it runs through the credits on the screen, kind of like a regular film, and things are happening, and the characters are walking and doing stuff, and it's showing the place they're at.
It's almost
stuff like the world. You're seeing the world operate, and it's great. It's
lots
really interesting.
Lots of wide, far-off setting shots, and kind of a montagey, like time-elapsing kind of thing segment going on.
And you get to see what the characters are doing immediately following, like the teaser scene from the beginning, and that's great. Now it only happens for the first episode, and then they go to a more traditional style of credits, which is fair. Probably far less expensive. You don't have to animate individually every single credit, but it was really cool.
Anyways. I would like to ask, Mandy, how do you like credits to be depicted in the storytelling generally?
I really like they use the credits to further the storyline, especially this. I think that's an episode pop out more. Ulysses does that. There's a new show called Ulysses, some kind of arc, I think. And it's really, really good, and they do a great job in their credits doing it. Where, you'll have an episode that seemingly is great, and then, like, things pop out at you that you didn't notice, and, like, the next time it changes, and it's really good. So I liked with Samurai Champloo that they were able to do this. There was one significant episode, and I believe it was the episode where you were talking about where Mugen and they kill the guy who's running away with his pseudo sister lady.
Yeah.
I believe that has a different ending credit. And it popped out, and it was so interesting, and
That's
it
interesting.
carried a lot more weight.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. That was my
That
favorite episode.
that was really good. I think that everyone who was around for when I watched the first part of that episode felt a little bit like the scene, like there was a little bit of like jankiness in the sticking together at the very beginning that made the narrative feel a little awkward, but that ending was
Yeah,
that was the
that was great.
best in the entire anime. Like
Super
they
great.
they had the
I agree.
build of music going up, and they had him like limping and injured, and immediately before that the guy was like, I'll tell you where the gold is someday in the future that's not right now unless I die in the next 5 minutes.
So brutal.
And we had established at the beginning of that episode, that was a two-parter, we'd established like that female character who betrayed him, whose name I cannot remember, she had been like talking about how she couldn't survive on her own, and she was
Yeah.
like she needed other people, and she like is a very interesting character, this feeling of like being trapped, of like having to rely on other people, of not being able to make it on her own. And then it was just that all made it perfect when Mugen was like, I don't kill her. And
Yeah.
he just kept going.
Yeah. No, that was
The
great.
the build up with all the music was to the moment where he passed her by.
Yeah, and
Ooh.
the music was really fast. There's like not a lot of fast, like drums, mid high pitched drums, and oh, it's great. That was wonderful. That was a wonderful moment. That was a moment. That was my favorite moment. The favorite scene in the whole show. So good. That was really good.
It made that more when he died, just because like they had set it up so well.
Yeah. No.
Like when he gets killed, it's
great build up.
She's left alone. Like she is not the ones. It's clear. It's specific. It's gritty. It's great.
Yeah.
What did you guys?
Do we all just kind of glitch out for a minute?
Wait, what? Oh, Mandy?
Mandy. Oh, good. What did you guys think of the episode immediately following that, which was or wait, maybe it's not the episode. Let me think. No, that was Misguided Miscreants. Bogus Booty is the episode after that, which was the episode that at the beginning they find Jean finds a bag of gold in the river, and then it turns out to be mafia gold. In that episode, Bogus Booty is almost kind of not about any of the characters, right? It's like it actually seems more like that episode is following the ninja girl. I kind of liked that episode. Because of the especially the ending, right? The kind of foreshadowing the future with the ending, with the girl being like with the ninja being like, I'm gonna find Mugen someday.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I wish we would have seen her later on, because I
Yeah.
kind of like her.
I would have seen her later on too.
It would have been,
because she's like, that's the guy I'm gonna marry.
That would have been a perfect moment to put in the end credits.
Just like, nope, got a job to do.
Yeah. No, although I will say that one thing I didn't like about that was Jean's. Well, it was funny, the whole Jean in the house, Jean in the brothel thing, but it did kind of, I don't know, it felt weird for his character.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
He
definitely
just had like a room full of
that
winches
thought was
from the
in
brothel.
my brain. That thought was most assuredly in my brain. Admittedly, like, yeah, that was a little bit strange. When we see him later on, it looks like he's getting like a foot massage or something, and it's not really clear what. I mean, I don't know. I agree. That does feel a little bit out of character for him. Like we never. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get it was funny that like, you know, oh gosh, what's his face? Mugen is trying to get laid, and he's getting beaten up by this ninja chick, and Gene is just like in a room with like 5 brothel women, and what I don't remember what they said. Someone one of them made like a comment when they open up in a scene, and it was something just like, "Oh, Gene," or something like that, like, or "Oh my God,"
It was
and it was like,
I feel like at a certain point in that episode, it became about the ninja.
oh yeah,
Rather than about any of the characters.
Yeah.
I will say, a joke that I loved in that episode
yeah, I know what
was
you're talking
they do the comical depiction where Fu eats a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so she's depicted as being really fat to show like how full she is and how much she ate. And that's a comical exaggeration. And I loved that in the narrative the people were like, "We're looking for a fat girl about your height." It's like
we're looking for somebody about your same age and height, but very fat.
It's like
that.
It was just so funny because it's the like that is meant to be like an abstraction of what's actually happening and going on, and them acting on that is
that was very
just
funny.
like
that was a good joke. That was a pretty good joke. But
I liked the part where Mugen in that episode is like, "You'll give me what I want." She's like, "Yes, just take care of them." And then he goes like crazy, and then she's like, "No, not yet. Not them. Not them." It was like great. He was like, "Ah."
Yeah,
he liked it so much he kept going for it because he's like, "Well, whatever."
Yeah, that was a good, I think, a good episode for Ninja Girl, actually. Oh, which was reminding me. Well, it is a little early to discuss it, but I don't know if we know who Best Girl is.
Ninja Girl is pretty good.
Holland, I don't know. It's pretty
Holland,
up there.
He doesn't recur though. He's not recurring.
Well, yeah,
he was.
But that's okay. He doesn't have to recur to be Best Girl.
I'll keep Holland. I will keep the spotlight firmly on Holland for Best Girl.
Although probably not waifu, because Holland clearly has no problems breaking breaking international laws.
Well, like picking up and being like, I don't know, I have responsibilities, but I want to go off and do my own thing for a while. Questionable waifu material there. We don't really know what kind of situation that would create, right? If you're like, I'm all happy, and then my spouse is like, I'm just gonna go and do stuff for a while on my own, and you're like, shit, spouse, why aren't you here fulfilling your obligations?
Okay, so changing gears.
Changing gears too.
I want to talk about a lot of. So we did get, I think, something that probably some of us would call filler episodes. We did a lot of what you might call filler episodes. Now, whether or not character development happens in those episodes or important character building happens in those episodes, for certain ones can be kind of, up to interpretation. The horror movie one, the horror episode is like it must have been like a Halloween episode.
The thing is that episode is such a dramatic shift in tone and style, and like just everything about that episode is so detached from the rest of the series that I would almost just like not count it as an episode in the show.
So this is an interesting thing, because here's how I feel about it. I think that Samurai Champloo does a really good job of creating a world, creating the tone and the characters, and they have an interesting thing happening, and I get the impulse to want to do like a seasonal episode. I get that impulse, and I've watched some shows that do it and it works. Generally sillier shows it works better for, but I think that with the number of episodes Samurai Champloo has, and with how they're not touching on the main story every single episode, the Sunflower Samurai every single episode, that Halloween episode that really doesn't have any bearing on the show, that doesn't really have any development, that just it's a thing that happened and then it didn't really happen. It was just like different dimension. I feel like
there's a thing that happens in the otherworld genre in anime is very, very popular, and oftentimes in the otherworld genre there is a way that magic works. Sometimes it's generally fairly soft, but oftentimes the the producers and creators will be like, we need to explain to the audience how stuff works. And so what they will do is they will create like a chibi mini episode that is non-canon of one character explaining to several other characters how something works in the universe, and they do it as kind of like a joke thing. And it like that's what I like in this too, is like it's a non-canon, non-serious like diversion from the story with the character in the show.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that, because it really doesn't have any bearing on the show whatsoever. It's not. It doesn't have to do with the canon. There's a magical guy in it that's like an undead person, and there's zombies, and of course, somebody. I don't know. So I can't remember. Somebody gets eaten. A couple. Do they all get eaten?
Nobody gets eaten. Nobody gets eaten.
I don't remember. It was just like it was such a weird episode that I just immediately.
No, it had such a significantly different tone, especially from the kind of gritty, realistic kind of thing that Samurai Champloo's going for. Mandy, you look like you have thoughts.
Well, I'm just trying to piece together because I remember, but I don't remember.
So it's in the episode that episode.
I can recap.
Yeah, go ahead. Now recap the episode.
The characters find mushrooms, and they are Matsutake mushrooms or something like that. And then Fu is like, "Gosh, these mushrooms are so expensive. We should sell them." And then Jean and Mugen start eating the mushrooms. Later in the episode, Fu notes that maybe they weren't those mushrooms and they were some other kind of mushrooms. Is that to suggest that the characters were high the entire time? But that wouldn't make sense because Fu didn't eat any mushrooms. Anyways, they fall down a hole. They end up in a mine shaft. Mugen cuts someone's arm off. Person takes their arm and person runs away. It doesn't bleed. They get outside. They find all the undead people mining, and it's not clear to the characters that they're undead. Mugen tosses the arm back to the guy who's still not bleeding. All the characters see this, but none of them acknowledge the lack of blood or the fact that the character's still standing up and walking about. They meet this eccentric fellow who's like, I am a noble, and this is a chart that shows that I am noble. You can see my family line going back. We are mining for treasure. They talk to him. They stuff weird things. He turns out to be a necromancer. It turns out the family lineage thing he has is all sorts of mistaken. And then Fu is like, that guy's arm was cut off at one point. Wait, everyone here is undead. Turns out everyone there is eating wasabi. Wasabi has preservative properties, which is why they haven't degraded. And end.
Yeah, it was weird. It was a weird episode.
I remember it.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like.
So that's another thing that that's one of my more pet peeves in is when they don't recognize the situation as it's happening. So with the arm being cut off and it not having blood, there's no recognition there, and so it's almost like they're deciding to not see what's happening.
Oh yeah.
And that drops the illusion. Just like on stage, if something happens, you acknowledge it happened.
Would you say?
Go ahead.
Would you say that it ruined the verisimilitude?
Yes. I don't know what that word means, but sure, I will agree with you.
Well, yeah. And that was the thing. That was the thing. He got to use the word. It was good. He's gonna use it every time.
I never get to use it outside of the podcast. This is important to me.
That's fair. But no, yeah. The episode because of that, because like it was so hard to believe because of things like that.
Yeah.
Like the person chops their arm off,
Well,
and then they
also
throw it back, and he like sticks his arm back on his like stump, and everybody just like doesn't, like nobody notices, nobody looks at it, nobody's like, hey, you put your arm back on. That's strange.
I also think that this is a non-canon episode.
It's no, it doesn't matter.
that's-
It's not. Yeah, it's non-canon. It
that's
never happened. Different dimension.
that's why I liken it to those like explaining to the audience things in chibi episodes that happened in other shows. Like those are fine, but they don't make it into the episode list because they're not a part of the show. They're like a fun thing that the creators did on the side because they were like, this will help people understand things.
Yeah. No, and that's it's something that I think with the limited number of episodes they have, which is always I think that's always kind of a theme with me. Unless you have a really long ongoing series, then you really got to utilize every single moment of screen time that you have. And so if you're going to use an entire episode to tell this kind of, unfortunately, kind of weak horror story thing, I get it. It's for Halloween or whatever. It was probably for Halloween.
It would have been more interesting had they have taken it at face value.
Yeah.
Had the characters have taken it at face value and been like, what the hell is this?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it happening? That would have even heightened it more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it had been if it had been more believable that the characters would have reacted in this way, and I get like if I were to just explain that very simply, if it was better written, because I just don't think the episode was well written. I think it was kind of hastily put together, and the characters kind of didn't. I honestly don't think they were intentionally being like ignorant of the problem. I just think it was kind of poorly constructed. So yeah, it was unfortunate that episode happened. But whatever. The rest, the whole of the story was really good. I'd say that probably those were my two least favorite episodes were the horror one and the baseball one. I didn't actually like the baseball one. It was also, now, whilst being less disjointed than the horror one, the baseball one, it was weird and campy for me. But yeah, Mandy, go ahead.
No, I'm just blocking children.
That's all. Don't look, children. Yeah.
I will say, I thought the smaller strike zone for the dog was hilarious.
That was funny. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this was a thing where like a bunch of the characters died during the baseball game. And it wasn't serious. It also didn't have any bearing on the story. Like this was a thing that essentially didn't happen. There were moments in it that were actually fun. But yeah, it was just like it was a thing that, especially when you're building up to the last, like the 3-part last episode, you're trying to build up to that big season finale, the show finale, and you waste these 2 episodes on like a goofy horror one and a goofy baseball one that have no bearing on the show.
I have a thought.
Holy
crap. There's a thing that happens that is an intentional narrative decision in storytelling sometimes. It happens in what's a good example? Made in Abyss. In Made in Abyss, they have in Made in Abyss. Should I keep talking? I'm gonna
please go ahead.
So in Made in Abyss, they have a thing where the tension gets really high and stuff happens, and then after that, they bring it down, and they have several episodes in a row of like more lighthearted, adventure-y, having a fun time kind of stuff, and then they mount the tension back up and have dramatic stuff again. And by having that like lighthearted stuff, it juxtaposed to the more serious stuff, they give more value to each thing. Admittedly, Made in Abyss has a much more natural flow to that than breaking and doing the full episode as
Yeah.
being lighthearted. It's like it's more the character's situation creates lightheartedness, and that now they're no longer under a lot of tension and pressure, so it feels a bit more natural. But what is your any opinions on that? Thoughts on that? The
So
idea of using that to emphasize the high points.
So I think this is an interesting narrative tool that I've seen in a bunch of stuff. I think it's interesting. I think that it can be done in a way that I think is really good, but I think also it can be done in a way that kills the build of the series.
I agree with that, and I would be
Mhm.
I agree, and I would be fascinated to hear both of your opinions on Trigun if we ever watch Trigun, because that
That's
has
fair.
the most like
Trigun's good
ridiculous to the serious, just side by side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the thing about this, the thing about when you are building a series and you're a lot of tension and a lot of crazy stuff going on. Now, to be fair, Samurai Champloo doesn't have that much crazy stuff happening throughout this story, but you're building up and they're getting closer and closer to Nagasaki, which is where they're going to find the Sunflower Samurai. So there's not like a ton of tension. So I think in my experience of watching shows, reading books, comics, etc., etc., the way that I think works the best is when you're building up tension, you're building up plot and etc., etc., and the last, like, you'll have an episode before, like, whatever the 2-part ending, the last big drawn out conflict, and that episode will lull at the beginning of the episode, and then over the course of the episode they're going to deal with whatever goofy lighthearted problems, but at the end of the episode or the end of that little chapter they're brought back to the seriousness of what's going on. So at the end of the episode we're reminded that it is serious and this is a thing, and we took some time to have a goofy lighthearted moment, but at the end of the episode we're reminded again that okay, we're right up here though, we're at the precipice of whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to mention a sort of the focus War of the Words. The episode War of the Words. I would like to draw attention to the conflict with Mugen in that episode, and him not being able to read.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, the portion of the episode devoted to where the restaurant, and they realize that Mugen can't actually read,
Mm-hmm.
and that he knows like a couple of characters and order off the menu because he's just like, I want ramen, I want this type of ramen, and doesn't look at what the menu. And he gets talked to by another person in the bar who passes out, and then later on that person comes, and to get revenge on him for being stuck with the bill, that character grabs Mugen and he's like, you want people to respect you, and forces him to learn to read.
Mm-hmm.
And that character, that mentor character, is the perfect character to do it, right? Because if Jean or Fu had tried to teach him to read, it would have failed outright.
Oh, yeah.
He wouldn't have taken it, but instead he had this like gruff mentor character who was like, your people are gonna think you're dumb because you're this stuff, and yelling at him, and it ended with this great like gripping hands, looking at each other, go out there and write your name. Damn, yeah, like
yeah, no, that was wonderful. The character, I mean, and this is the thing you're talking about, how we think that so little of that episode was actually spent on Mugen. He was kind of the side story.
That was
I think
that
they should have flipped it. I think that the graffiti people, there's the 2 graffiti kids or whatever having their weird contest to see who can do the best graffiti in the most dangerous place or whatever. That should have been a side story that we poked in at every few minutes, and then the main story was about Mugen.
My opinion on this is I actually think that was the intention. I think the intention
Right.
was to have the graffiti characters be a supporting story to give more like power and merit to Mugen's story.
And to be like, this is what Jean and Fu are doing.
Yeah, they just misallocated the screen time. They gave too much to the graffiti characters.
Yeah,
Mandy, did you have thoughts?
I just agree with you. I think that your assumption seems pretty spot on. I know that, like, watching it and thinking about it in that direction makes a lot of sense, that they went too far in one direction instead of focusing on the main story and the struggle, and that could have solved the problem right there.
I will also say, I don't remember. Hold on. Talk or do something.
No. But overall, I mean, actually, I don't even. I can say generally I enjoyed that episode, but I
like
the put more of Mugen in, because
I like
that was the more interesting story.
I like the overcoming that conflict. I like the like a conflict in not being able to read in a character, like having not having learned a skill that makes them seem unintelligent to other people and having to overcome that. I like that as a theme. I think that's a fun, interesting theme, because it's like it's kind of like with people who are speaking a language other than their native tongue end up sounding unintelligent because it's like, oh, this is a second language and I don't speak it very well. And I love that like misdepiction of characters where it's like the appearance that they're not very smart because they don't know something, but it's just this like difficulty in communicating and this like pressure towards Mugen that's like he wouldn't want people to know because people are going to think he's dumb because he can't read.
Well, and so this is actually why I think, or go ahead, Mandy.
I was just gonna hop on board with that, and that makes a lot more sense to his character too, and it adds a level of understanding with how volatile he can be.
Yeah, he's well, and this is the perfect thing for that character to have a struggle with, because like certainly if you give him a bunch of bad guys to fight, that's not gonna be a complex struggle for him because he's really good at that. What's a good struggle for if you have like a giant, bodybuilder muscle person? What is the struggle that is interesting for that character? It's certainly not to lift heavy things or to climb up something or to do something physical. It's to give them a mental puzzle, give them something that is very psychological, or they have to learn something, and this is Mugen's this like it's an interesting struggle for him because it's his weak point, because he's not good at that kind of thing. And I don't mean
they wait a while to reveal that, but I feel like they do a very nice job kind of tying that all together. Like it's consistent with the story too.
Yeah, great. Really, yeah, good struggle for him. Very consistent for his character. And
solidly, yeah.
Also, yeah, that guy, the teacher, that was funny. Although I would say he is a little bit too conveniently like the perfect person to teach him. Like, he was everything that was exactly perfect for that character. But that episode wasn't like super deep. I will say so the first half of the series had a lot more I think really thoughtful episodes. In the second half of the series, mostly though because of the filler episodes and because of the kind of quicker, looser episodes.
So, my opinion, the second season specifically.
So okay, define second season. What is that?
Episode 18 and beyond, War of the Words. I think that War of the Words had a small portion of the episode that was really stellar. But my opinion is that the second season, episode 18 and beyond, it's really War of the Words, the 3-part finale, and the 2-part episode Elegy of Entrapment.
Oh yeah.
I think those are the episodes that should be watched. I think if someone watches this show, if I recommend this to someone, here's an episode list. Watch these episodes, skip
Yeah.
certain other episodes, and I
I
would say
don't agree.
I just don't think a lot of the I don't think it's not even
Okay.
a lot. It's some of the episodes I don't think tie in enough with the character
I'm
beliefs.
actually going to side with Mandy here now.
Okay.
But not for the reason that you might think.
Right.
So if this series were 3 seasons, I'd say find an episode list.
I
It's
agree.
23 episodes.
Oh, you think it's short enough,
yeah,
to
just watch them. You know, they're not. Although skip the Halloween one. Skip the Halloween
Yeah,
one.
that one.
That was a subpar episode. I think overall it detracts. Everything else, like, there's a little bit of character development. There's some jokes you might miss.
I mean,
You know,
after
it's
trying to
23
watch
episodes. Watch it.
after trying to watch through Sailor Moon, I will never go without recommending an episode list when there are filler episodes.
That's fair. But that's exactly.
Watch 1 and 3 and 13 and 27.
So the ratios there are a little
How
bit
many-
higher. But
Yeah,
I
but
would go old school on that. I would watch all.
mhm. Oh man,
But I mean, I would like
Oh.
Outlaw Star and try.
I will
that.
say,
I
I
tried.
will
to...
say,
Mhm.
Sailor Moon is distinctly different in that Sailor Moon is extremely structured.
Mhm.
If you watch episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7,
Mhm.
each episode, same high points, same low points, same arc.
Mhm.
Like, it is very structured and rigid in its episode design intentionally.
Okay.
So that is Sailor Moon is very intentionally an extreme.
So,
Jake, you were saying you tried to watch Outlaw Star.
oh no, okay, yeah. So way back, I watched Outlaw Star when I was young because spaceships. Mandy, you've seen Firefly, yeah? So Outlaw Star, the first, it was the first or second episode. I swear to God, Firefly, because I think Firefly happened after Outlaw Star. No, it definitely happened after Outlaw Star. Firefly, I don't want to say like wholesale steals these shots from Outlaw Star, but like
There are definite similarities.
like the guy. Okay, so the guy, they walk into a storage room or whatever, and there's a storage saying they kick it open and steam comes out, and there's a naked girl curled in a fetal position inside the box, and the character has this reaction of like, huh, and it's like, this is so I don't know if maybe these ideas were come to in complete isolation,
It's not parallel development.
but I'm pretty sure Firefly stole that from Outlaw Star. Not that there's anything terribly wrong with that. Also, no, a good reference.
Connect. That's an interesting one. I'm gonna have to go back and watch now.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, watch it. Also, if anybody watches this and they get the reference that Noah made or that Bad Strategy made, right there, you get 80s points.
80s points.
Cheesy 80s movies points.
They're no longer redeemable because they're 80s.
They're from the
but
80s, but
You got them.
that was an obscure one.
Enjoy.
Maybe we should do something point based. That'd be fun.
Wait, say that again.
Maybe we should do something point based.
Point based.
Like if our fans reach a certain amount of points.
Oh. Oh dear.
I would like to.
I'm getting totally off subject. Let's go back to Samurai Champloo.
Yes.
Okay, going back to Samurai Champloo. Elegy of Entrapment, the episode with the blind songstress who at the end of the first episode is revealed to be an assassin. What are your opinions? Feed me opinions.
Yeah. So my opinion is that I overall enjoyed that little story with her. I thought she was way more interesting before she was an assassin, because it was just like she was this interesting blind character who had a kid somewhere and she was traveling and it was really interesting, and it was like, oh no, actually she's an assassin. It was like, oh, okay, that's fair, I guess. They're assassins, but I enjoyed it, but I did think she was more interesting when she wasn't an assassin and she was just like a blind traveling musician with
And
family ties.
Also, Mugen was like bonding with her and was like,
Right.
we had a relationship between her and Mugen, and when she became an assassin, like I feel like the relationship between her and Mugen was very interesting. I agree. I don't feel that the her being an assassin contributed meaningfully to the story. I think it would have been more interesting if she hadn't have been an assassin.
Here's so the thing about the thing about it for me was that it started out as a really interesting episode with this fascinating character who starts developing these relationships with Mugen, who doesn't really have human relationships very easily. And she talks to Jean, and there's, she's talking to Fu, and she has this really interesting relationship with all of them, and she has her own story where her kid, we don't really know about where the kid is. She has this, this illusion to some reason that she has to be out traveling because she's not, like a very good mother or something like that. And it's really interesting. And then it turns into, oh, actually, this is just an assassin who's trying to kill you. And I was I thought it was so much. I was just thinking it was going to be because this was also right after, it was pretty close on the heels of the episode with Mugen and his quote unquote sister person. And so I was thinking, wow, this is going to be really interesting and really deep, and it just was an assassin, which was fine. But when I started, I was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting.
My opinion is it's also important. Her being an assassin, it is foreshadowed, I think, at least once before that, but it's not actually revealed until the very end of the first part of that episode. I think everything before that was really good and like the much calmer pace. It was much more interesting, everything that happened before that. I think once she was revealed as an assassin, well, it was at the end of the first part, right? Yeah. So I would almost say that here's the problem. I'm going to establish what I think is the reason that they shouldn't have done is because I think all of the mechanical benefits of constructing the story that way, of making her an assassin, like fighting because she believes that if she does, I think all of the benefits of that are not taken advantage of by the writers. I think her being an assassin after developing a relationship with Mugen is good because we can have the struggle of people being like, I don't want to kill you, you're my friend, I loved you, but we don't have that struggle because of the characters. It's not who they are. They're not gonna, like, they'll feel bad about it later, but they're gonna do what they have to. So we don't get that struggle, and the whole her, like, she has to do it because of her kid thing. I mean, there are a few ways to use that to develop the character and to make it interesting, but at the end of the day, we don't really see that either. It ends in her just being like, yeah, my kid's all, and I literally
drops all of it.
Yeah. Well before that happened, I was like, the only ways they can end this are this. Yeah, and there are only like these ways they can end it, and they ended it like the realization. And I was like, yes, I listed that. That was it. It wasn't. I think that they could have taken advantage of those like elements of the story. I think that those elements have benefit and merit. I just don't think they did take advantage of them.
I agree.
And this is I think also to be clear, I think probably we all thought the episode was fine, but it just it started off in such a potentially interesting place.
It literally doesn't reveal she's an assassin until the end of the first part, so it's half the episode is before she's an assassin, and that half is really good. It is very mellow. It's Mugen like bonding with a person, which we don't see often. It's building everything up. It's that first part is great. So
And I agree too, because I feel like they kind of dropped it a little bit, because all of these motivated actors could have been so good, and then we lead off with, oh, her son's dead, and shows she's just doing it for money. Like, what?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
that's not strong enough. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't. Okay, weird.
Yeah, no,
I don't
for
know.
sure.
It just didn't feel right. It didn't flow right.
I agree. I think that two-parter. I think there might. I think that there is good stuff in the second part. I just don't think that I don't think that anything involving the assassin character is good after the reveal. I think that she's revealed, nothing else interesting really happens with her after she's revealed, but the story in the second part following Mugen, Fu, and Jean is still good. It's still interesting. We have like Jean gets saved and meets an old man, and the old man teaches him wisdom about catching fish. We have the Mugen and Jean talking to each other and being like, "We're fighting someone who neither of us can beat," and then Mugen deciding to go with it. I don't think it's bad. I just think that she was a really good character before she became an assassin, and then it was kind of like, okay, this is like
Yeah.
down to more bog standard kind of quality. It was really good, and
So
they didn't take advantage.
So here's a thought I have about kind of the series as a whole. I think that overall it was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters. I think it's unique. I think the tone is unique, especially in feudal Japan.
I love the like kind of authentic, realistic, grim tone, like struggling to make it by. That's
yeah, and has a vaguely like hip hop / jazzy at moments tone going on.
not my thing, but I like the way they did a good
it's
job.
It's a cohesive. It's generally relatively cohesive in that way. I think that. So right now, I think Samurai Champloo sits as a thing that, in general, people would say, "Oh yeah, that's a really good anime. It's a classic."
Yeah.
I think if the writers had, I don't know if it was, whatever time, or if they had more forethought in the episodes, if they had made, because they had some very thoughtful episodes. They had some episodes that were interesting, and the characters were, the one with the kid who is stealing to keep his mother. That was such an interesting, thoughtful episode.
He was.
It was. There's the brothel one with Jean and his the woman that he kind of falls in love with. Like there's some really thoughtful, really interesting episodes. If they had cut out like the Halloween one and the baseball one, and they had gotten to do, if they had been more thoughtful with certain episodes, like the one where
I would say.
Well, so I'll finish. I'm gonna finish this real quick.
Yeah, I want you to finish.
So if they had done that, if they had taken the one where with the assassin lady who was, at first she was this traveling blind like musician, and then she just was an assassin. If they had maybe tried to do something a little more thoughtful with that, because they could have, because it was kind of built in that way. And
I mean, it had the mechanisms in place for it. I think narratively that they could have made it better without changing the actual story of the episode at all.
Yeah. No, yeah,
well,
exactly.
They made it muddy and non-specific, and I think whenever you make a choice like that to be muddy and not specific of what you're doing, then you're just throwing your audience for a loop, and not in a great way. Yeah. It's like, okay, then why did I watch this episode?
Yeah, and
I don't mean that badly, but it does.
Again, yeah, it was a good show.
The quality of it.
So if they had done that, if they had been had more thoughtful episodes, if they had put more time into making some of the weaker episodes more thoughtful and more interesting, and the same quality as some of the other episodes, I think they could have taken it from being that show that people say, oh yeah, it's a great anime, it's a classic, and it would take it up to kind of that level where things like Cowboy Bebop sit, where people would say, yeah, no, that's one of the best anime ever. Like, that's an amazing show.
My opinion is that I think that it has some very high highs
Mm-hmm.
and some like low lows, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it doesn't have a ton of very low
Yeah.
points. I think the issue is that there are a lot of points that are just kind of like sitting level at a
Mm-hmm.
not very high
Yeah.
up point that are like this contrasts the super good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It is my opinion that if a person watched it with an episode list telling them to skip like a few of the episodes here and there, then it would be an excellent, almost as good as Cowboy, like approaching Cowboy Bebop level of quality in anime.
Yeah.
That it is like it's really good,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that like some of the best episodes do have a few hiccups here and there,
Yeah.
but I think overall it would be like
Mm-hmm.
it's really solid if you look at the good episodes. Mandy, go.
I just wanted to say I agree with you in that I felt like there were a lot of missed opportunities
Mm-hmm.
for some great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that I think that probably if I had one single thought, it almost sounds unfair, but if I had one single thought about Samurai Champloo, it would be missed opportunities.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I think it's a good show. But if they had just done like a little thing here and a little extra here and
Yeah.
just made some of the low episodes, or just been more thoughtful, because they can do thoughtful, interesting episodes. Like there are several of them and they're really good. And afterwards, I'm just like, that was great. I enjoyed that. I love the characters. Right. I am torn about whether or not I'm happy or sad at the end of the episode.
I will say,
mm-hmm.
I think the really good moments where the show shines
Mm-hmm.
are the reason why people remember it as being so good, because
100%.
Like
yeah,
like some of those,
yeah.
especially some of the very early episodes, are incredibly thoughtful. And some of those moments, like the Mugen backstory episode where he doesn't kill the girl that he grew up with, are just phenomenal.
I'd actually probably have to put that on my list of favorite moments in anime. Because it's just it's a wonderful. He's been betrayed, and he's suddenly his childhood friend. She's walking down the road with her lover who had betrayed him, and they both. And here he comes hobbling down the street, and this great music build loud, da, 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 and the guy goes in. He had just said, "I'll tell you about where it's hidden a little later on when things cool down." And he runs up, and Mugen just kills him. And then he's walking towards her, and it's just like what a good moment. And then he passes her, and then she like falls to her knees, and she's like, "Kill me!"
Yeah.
That was such a good moment.
Can I just say, in a narrative, when there can be a build to inaction that is that meaningful and that much more impactful than had it been a build to action, that is just real good.
No, those moments are the moments I think that people say Samurai Champloo is a really great anime, because I think it's a really good anime. Or no, I would say it's a good anime with great moments and great episodes. And I think I'm sure the writers went on to do
bring up something.
Yeah, please.
Ninja Girl. Did we talk about Ninja Girl?
Oh yeah, I think we very briefly spoke about Ninja Girl. She's great.
That episode was so good.
That was fun. I enjoyed Mugen's.
It moved so fast. That episode was so fast paced, and I loved it because when they get in there, like he picks her out right away. He's like, "Oh, I want her," and then she's like this badass, and then she like, goes off, and she's like, "Take care of them for me, and I'll do stuff for you." She never does, and she's like, "That's the man I'm gonna marry."
I wish that she had been in there again. I wish we had run into her again. That would have been, even if it was in the end credits or that last like little montage of the last episode. If we just like saw her at one point, I would have been happy. But I was like, oh, we never saw her again. That was the only time she was there.
Maybe she found him. We don't know.
Probably. She seems
Did we
relatively
want to Did we want to talk about the very end of the show before we finish?
Yeah, go for it.
I don't remember if we talked about the way that it ended. Did we?
I think we discussed it before
We did.
we went live.
Uh-huh.
We didn't discuss it after going live though.
Probably.
So
I don't remember.
No, we
so my opinion on the very end of the show is that it was good, and like I thought it was good, and I thought the way they filmed it was nice. I feel that it contradicted a lot of the like character development in the building and the like the natural conclusion that was reached by the characters' development because they split up at the end. Jean had just decided. All the characters had development that led them to this like being together and trusting each other kind of thing. And Gene had just gotten through his scene where he's like, I've been alone all my life and now I have friends and I'm not alone anymore. And then immediately afterwards they're like, okay, split up. It's like, I feel like it would have been better if they had like, if instead of ending with them splitting up, it had been Fu starts walking forward, like showing that she is willing to go off on her own right now and stuff, and then the other two characters follow after her. I think that would have been
that
it was
fair.
not a natural conclusion that they ought to split up. I don't think it fit in narratively. I can see though how those developed. They had reached a point where they were able to split up, but I don't think it was fully within the way the story had been building and the way the characters were for them to be splitting up.
Yeah. So this is the thought that I had on the ending was that I didn't hate the ending, and I think it works for kind of the way their characters had been building up, because I think one of Fu's thing was that she kind of felt like she couldn't do anything without her bodyguards, or that she couldn't like get up and go do her own thing without help, without some catalyst. And she, in the end, she is kind of going and doing her, like leaving and being by herself, and she's feeling confident that she can do it.
If they'd have tied that more into the Mugen backstory episode with the girl who had the like I can't be on my own thing going on, then I think that
no,
would...
for sure. And it kind of worked with Mugen and Jean, because they had, over the course of the series, they kind of just want to kill each other, or rather Mugen wants to kill Jean and Jean wants to kill Mugen in self-defense. So it works that they can kind of go their separate ways and be peaceful and not have that happen, and they can be okay with it.
But then also separating with a scene where they were both like lying on the floor, like, Mugen said, I don't really, it's weird, I don't really feel like killing you anymore.
I loved that.
Yeah.
I did that moment, like the lines they exchanged there was really...
Can I also just say, I love character development that the character doesn't necessarily fully like consciously understand, like Mugen being like, it's weird, I don't really want to kill you anymore. He's not like I thought it over and I understand my feelings now, and I think that my friendship with you is more important than taking your life. No, he's like, it's weird, I just don't want to kill you anymore.
Yeah.
Cool Mugen. I'm with you.
I do think though, at the same time, that it, like, I thought it was fine that they, like, I didn't hate it. I didn't hate that they went their separate ways. I would have been happier if they'd have stayed together, because I think that could have worked just fine for the way Mugen and Jean's character development had happened, and the way Fu. Sorry, I keep thinking Pho.
I know, that's
I'm
what
hungry,
I do. Because I'm like, delicious noodles? Delicious noodles, no.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, so yeah.
One more thing on the ending. I will say, the big reason that I don't like them splitting up is that it doesn't feel the characters are pursuing their own beliefs, interests, and goals in doing so. My final thoughts on the show are I would recommend it with an episode list. I think that you should watch it, and that it's great, and that it's one of the better animes out there.
Yeah, so I, as a final thoughts, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought there's some really great episodes, really great moments. It was good. Could have been like a really it could have been, one of those right up there next to Cowboy Bebop, or any of those big anime that everybody talks about as being the best anime ever. It has episodes of that quality. Overall, I enjoyed it. It was good. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it.
Anybody who's watched it in the past, and anyone who grew up with it should watch it, because there are a lot of missed things. I feel like you get a lot more out of it. Just watching it again, I was like, oh wow, I missed that. So it was like
it's
really
not that long.
26 episodes.
It's pretty short. I agree with Mr. Bear about the ending. It didn't feel right because they could have left each other at any point, and now they're leaving each other. It didn't feel like it flowed well. I love it. It is a classic in my book, but I grew up with it. So I wouldn't say it was as good as Cowboy Bebop, but it's still up there for me.
That's fair. That's hard to stack things up to Cowboy Bebop.
It's also important to note that like the similarities between the two in some of the like style and in the having the same voice actor
certainly
does draw those comparisons naturally and does give it a feel of being like Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah. Okay. So also something I want to say about that is comparing things to Cowboy Bebop in the context of anime, it's kind of the same as in the like context of literature as comparing things to Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Cowboy Bebop is like the Shakespeare of anime, but I'm saying when everybody knows Cowboy Bebop is good. Nobody needs to hear it. Same thing with everybody knows Shakespeare is good. You don't need to say it. You don't need to compare things to it. Like comparing something to Shakespeare is you're saying that it's amazing, and it's the same. So
it's just like it's one of those things.
The comparison is that I grew up watching those.
Yeah,
and
no,
so
yeah,
they were
absolutely.
They were both in my life.
And I would say, as you were saying, that for you it's a classic. Honestly, I think it's just a classic. It's a good anime. It's a classic. I think it's one that a lot of people watched and that probably affected a lot of people. I don't think there's any. I don't think anybody can contest that Samurai Champloo hasn't been a relatively prolific anime that is at least pretty good, and that does have some really good episodes.
What are we watching next?
What are we watching next? Oh my god, we didn't even cover this.
Yes, we didn't. We should have, but we didn't. Shocker. Who is shocked? Not even a little bit.
What do we want to watch?
Okay, so Hallen, as I understand, is it next week? You might have some internet connectivity problems, so I don't want to watch. Was it not next week? It's later on.
Next week, week after.
Week after. Okay, so I just wanted to choose something. So this week, Noah, or bad strategy. How long is Trigun?
Yeah.
What about Bakuno?
God.
That's fair.
Oh, Bakuno is also a solid option. Okay, Trigun is 26 episodes.
Okay. How long is
Bakuno?
Well, the first arc.
I'm gonna figure out how long it is and then subtract 8 episodes.
Yes, because the train arc is the only one people care about with Bakuno.
It's actually 16 episodes.
I think we should watch Bakuno. That's what I think. I've seen like the first 2 episodes of Bakuno. Bakuno, I know, is a pretty solid anime.
I remembered it as being like 28 episodes, but 16. That's a different length than I remember.
That those 2 numbers are not the same. So
those are not the same.
Mhm.
This is like me remembering the baseball episode as all the American players having Japanese accents.
Right.
They didn't. That was
Nope.
just the translator, and it was like a weird French Japanese accent.
I think it was Japanese and then it turned French.
Yeah, that was confusing.
Okay.
But yeah, so next week, that's gonna be oh my gosh, November the 17th. Also, if I didn't say that, today's the 10th of September. So
Are you ready?
September the 17th, we're gonna be watching. We will be we will be reviewing / talking about / contemplating Bakano. It takes place on a train, or at least the good parts do, apparently. So,
and it has a phenomenal intro.
it does
one
have
of
a really,
the best.
really good intro. I've watched a couple episodes, and the intro is really great.
It really is a train ride.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey!
Mystery on a train.
And not enough mysteries take place on trains these days.
Right?
So
That's one of the best places for mysteries.
exactly. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Have a lovely day. Again, next week, the 17th, we're going to be watching Bakano, or not watching, but talking about. Have a good day. Good night. Bye.
Bye.